I've been dreaming on in my head like I've seen it. A life worth living is a life with meaning. I'll do what I love till my heart stops beating. I'm feeding this demon.
Oh my god, guys, look at that fucking hat.
Work a job every day till your dreams fade away. Like a card never change. Play the game.
Big old striker, guys, look at that. Look at that. Big old girl from Pop.
You the man with the bridge shit, man. I can tell you that.
Look at that big one, guys.
That's a freaking hog, dude. Get up here.
Woo, baby. Look at that tank.
What's going on, guys? Bassin' Out Mafia here, coming at you with a new video for this week. In this week's video, we are going to go over the last segment of pre-spawn and how to break down a lake during the spring transition. This is the last section right before the bass start spawning and up until they'll get and start making their beds. So let's just get into it about where we left off last week, and we'll go with the spinnerbaits. This time of the year, and once the water starts getting into the higher 50s to low 60s, like 58 to like 60 degrees, you can start throwing your downsized spinnerbaits because you won't need to be fishing in that little bit deeper water. So you can kind of use your 3/8, maybe ½ ounce, ¼ ounce spinnerbaits, depending on how deep of water you're fishing. That's how I like to judge which size. But I got a hog collar here and a War Eagle.
That's a War Eagle finesse spinnerbait. That's a good time of year to start throwing that finesse spinnerbait when those fish start getting really shallow.
They aren't feeding quite as heavy then, and they're kind of more so pushing up to get ready to do their thing. And then, of course, we got the chatterbaits next. Got some Z-Man chatterbaits. Got the Jackhammer and one of the Pro Z series. And then I also got one of the Crawl Size Fire Crawl. All these are going to be crawl colors now. Usually around this temperature, it's mostly primarily crawl colored chatterbaits that we're using and throwing. If they're going to hit it, they'll hit that one most likely. You want to vary your retrieves with this and the spinnerbait a little bit. Slow roll it. Sometimes you can go faster and rip it a little bit this time of year. They'll start getting maybe a little more active, or be more willing to hit something chasing faster, or react to it going faster, because they're getting more active and the water's warming up better. But they're the best colors for this time of year. We also got some of these Lake Fork shads for other trailers we like. And then we'll throw off to Dad for the next.
Okay, so next we're going to go to the big fish bait for the spring. That thing is a staple at this time of year when you're talking at 58 and mid 60 degree water temperature. The glide bait. That thing is going to be a key to getting some big bites up shallow with the warming water. So you always want to have that in your arsenal. And like we had in the last video, some of the swim baits maybe. If they're not eating those things, so you have to slow down a little bit, and we're going to start hitting some soft plastics and jigs.
And jigs, of course. I got my GRT jigs with the Berkeley Power Baits, the Champ Crawl there. There's them a little bit closer. And then also got a little Dirty Jigs with a Straight King Rage Crawl on the back. Little watermelon red light color. A lot of red this time of year. I like that in my crawls. A lot of the crawls are going to have that this time of year coming out first. It's one of the best, well, that's around here, that's one of my best colors all year round. And then we also got these guys, Berkeley Powerbait Max Sense chunks. They're another nice chunk, and they got a lot of really good scent in them. Fish like to hold on to them a little bit better. And that really does actually help a little bit.
That's a big key catching fish in the spring a lot of times, especially on pressured lakes. Is, you know,
you want to have them hold on to that as long as you possibly can.
See a lot of baits, but they don't see a lot of baits that smell good to them and smell like food, so that helps. Makes a huge difference.
Just helps them hold on to it a little bit longer than something that doesn't taste good. I mean, you know how it is for you. If you put something in your mouth and it doesn't taste good, you're probably spitting it back out. And if it does taste good, you're not.
Exactly.
If the jig's not working, then sometimes we'll slow it down even more and go to something like a Texas rig. Here I got this Straight King Rage Lizard already rigged up on a Texas rig for you. For those of you that don't know what a Texas rig is or how to Texas rig, that's basically all it is. Taking a wide gap hook, that's a Gamakatsu 3/0 wide gap there with a Wu tungsten weight, and you just rig the worm straight across it like that, or the lizard or whatever you're trying to Texas rig, really. Straight across just like that, and that's Texas rig. Retrieve for that, you just slowly drag it along the bottom, give it a little pop here or there. That's really all you have to do with that. And key is slow, go real slow. Here is the rages in the pack. Another bait you can Texas rig. You can almost Texas rig anything, like these little Zoom French fry like worms. These are the Zoom centipedes. You can even take a Zoom finesse worm and Texas rig that as well. Got a whole pack of them there. Even these Berkeley, the Champ Crawls, you can Texas rig them as well. Then next, we'll let Dad go over some even more finessier style baits.
So sometimes you gotta get really finesse with them in the spring. Can be seeing a lot of different baits, or they're just turned off a little bit. And we're gonna go with a drop shot next. And that's, you know, one of my favorite things for the spring, all the way through the pre-spawn spawn. And that there is gonna catch you some big fish. You think it's just a small bait, but you're going to catch a big fish on that. And basically, you just have a leader.
Especially around here in our pressured lakes. Most people and most other places, people think of this as just a fish catching bait.
Yes.
And something to get you bit because the water's so hard or whatever. And most of the time, it's only little fish in other places. But around here, it can, especially in the spring, it can get you some 4 and 5 pounders. We've caught a lot of nice fish on that this time of year, especially dropping it into different kind of trees and any kind of structure that you can get around.
Fish it in them transition zones, that 8 to 10 foot range, and all the way up to a foot of water. And what I do is I like to call it fishing slow but fast. Contrary, I guess, but I take this out. I'll cast it out, and I do a lot of fan casting with it. I'm going to cast into areas where I think that fish should be settling and sitting for this time of year, which is those, you know, anywhere, like I said, there's transition banks coming into the spawning pockets, or even into a spawning flat where I think there should be fish staging. I'm going to take this bait, and I'm going to do a lot of fan casting with it, and I'm going to take it out, cast it, you know, as far as I can. I'm going to reel up my line, and I'm going to feel out the bait, keep it off of the bottom, just that sinker touching. And I'm going to just drag it back slowly, and I'm going to shake it, and I'm going to drag it back slowly, and I'm going to shake it. And I'm going to try to cover as much water as I can with that bait. And that's what you want to do this time of year. You really need to cover a lot of water and find out exactly where the fish are. That tells you what kind of timing they have with the spawn and what they're doing, what stage they're in. And that's the whole key to this 3-part series that we're doing, is trying to help you figure out what part of the spawn they're in and what baits to use for that transitional time. And you know, when you find them, you can repeat that same pattern over the entire lake. So that's really what you want to try to do. And you know, like we say, we like to fish a lot faster, and basically we fish with search baits, and we find them fish, and we work on them with those baits until we can't catch them anymore with them, and then we'll slow down and do this stuff with the jigs and the drop shot, Texas rigs and stuff like that. Whatever we can do to get them to bite a couple more baits.
And with the drop shot here, those of you who don't know what a drop shot is or want to know how to rig it, I'm not going to really go over it in this video because I already did a whole video on it. So if you do, I will link that above so you can check that out then, but that'll be linked above here. Then next, another thing we really like to go real finesse is the Ned rig. I got this little Z-Man TRD rigged up on a Woo Tungsten Ned head there, and they're real nice, got a lot of stretch to them. So
catch a lot of fish on that bait without having to put on a new bait or anything like that.
And there's them in the package. A lot of green pumpkins. They have another color, California 420, it's good, or yoga pants. They're a lot of the really good colors that we like to use with them.
And you can fish that in the same areas.
Yep, all the same areas. Pretty much everything we're talking about here. This time of year, you're really focusing on those main key areas. The transitions.
15 feet and less.
On the edges of grass around transitions, if there's some grass in the backs of coves or anywhere, and you can find a transition close to that grass, and a nice defined weed line, a lot of times there'll be fish on it. Or you can find a nice transition bank with some trees or some bushes in the water. A lot of times there'll be fish around it and close to it or on it.
Right. And you want to look for those banks that have the pea gravel or the shale rock or stuff like that on them, because the bass aren't going to be spawning in areas where, you know, they're not heading to those areas where there's like a muddy bottom. They're not going to lay their eggs there because their fish, you know, their eggs won't survive in that. So they gotta make their beds in that pea gravel or slightly rocky bottoms and hard bottom areas. That's what you want to find. And when you're dragging your drop shot or your Ned rig on the bottom or your jig, you're going to be able to feel that hard bottom with that, and that's going to tell you that you're probably in a good area that you could find some bass.
Then next,
another favorite.
This becomes really popular when the bass get really close to the spawn and they're really not wanting to eat stuff. But the slow fall that a wacky rigged finesse worm has is just almost too irresistible to them. This bait stays in the strike zone so long as it's falling that they just can't resist it.
It's so subtle for that time of year. Just like the we were talking about downsizing your spinner baits and maybe to the finesse spinner bait. It's just something really subtle that, you know, is matching the mood of the fish when they're coming up and ready to do their thing.
Yeah, because this is a light little worm, and especially Zoom plastics, a lot of their little finesse worms actually float. So the only thing weighting this down is that hook. And as you can tell, that'll have a really slow fall. There's some of my colors. We've got this one, there's a sungill color there. And then this one is little cotton candy or watermelon candy.
Yeah.
Another bait you can wacky rig is a Senko. Senko has a little bit faster of a rate of fall than the finesse worm will have, but they can still work pretty good, especially if you're fishing in a little bit deeper water or around the 5 to 10 foot range.
Yeah.
That Senko will kind of come in a key a little bit better there, so you don't have to wait quite as long for it to sink. You can also Texas rig these as well. I kind of forgot to say that earlier, but another great Texas rig bait, weighted or non-weighted.
And it has the max scent in that one.
Yep, those are the max scent Berkeley power bait, the Generals. Then I feel like this is a staple that a lot of people forget about on lakes. If you're a river fisherman, this is always something that you're throwing, or if you're a smallmouth fisherman, this is always something that's in your
arsenal.
Yeah, in your arsenal. But if you're a lake fisherman, not too many will think about this as much anymore, at least. Is a tube. This time of year, a tube's kind of a great do-nothing bait. When these fish aren't really active and not wanting to do much and not wanting to feed good like this, coming up to the spawn, this is a good thing to get them to react to as well. It's just popping along the bottom, looks like a little minnow feeding, kind of like the Ned would, or even like a little crawl bouncing around on the bottom. A lot of times they'll hit that if they won't hit nothing else.
Yeah, and there's that's another thing. You can fish slow fast, and I'd like to do something called cracking a tube, and I fish it on a spinning rod with braid and a fluorocarbon leader, but I put that with like a 1/4 ounce head, and I'll really snap it off the bottom and let it fall back down, and snap it off the bottom and let it fall back down, and cover a lot of water with it, and you get good reaction strikes out of some bigger fish with it that way.
And then last but not least, this became one of my big staples last year. Did a whole video on it. Using these Zoom centipede worms or any type of French fry style worm like this with the flat back and bottom. Like I said, I'm not going to go over the rig wise of this. This is going to be called the Tiny Child rig, is how we rig this. Did a whole video on it, so you can check that out. I will link that above, and you can check that out. But basically, you're just taking a nail weight, shove it in the butt of this, and Texas rigging it so that it falls. And when this falls, it's really good for fishing around docks, or if you're in trees and cover. It snakes through the cover really, really good.
And it kind of falls backwards.
And it kind of falls backwards, so it drifts into the cover better and gets down into the fish.
Yeah.
So I caught some nice ones on this towards the end of the year last year, or towards the beginning of spawn last year.
Right in the time that we're talking about right now. That 58 to 65 degree water.
If you want,
range.
make sure you check that video out as well. And of course, make sure you put scent on. Scent always helps, especially this time of year. Just helps them hold on to it just a little bit longer.
Can't stress that enough.
Up until the spawn, they, especially right at the beginning of the spawn, or right when they're starting to make their beds or get up there to do their beds and stuff, like I said, they're not trying to eat really then. So if they're hitting something, they're going to try to get it away from their bed or away from what they're making to be their bed, and they don't hold on to it. So usually having something like this on makes it hold on to it just a little bit longer, so you can get that hook into them. Can't stress that enough, like he said. But with that being said, that's going to conclude this video in the last stage up until the spawn, and how to break down a lake during this time of year during the spring transition. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. That lets me know that you're enjoying this content when you're liking this video. And if this is the third, fourth, fifth video that you've watched of mine, you might as well just hit the subscribe button, because you're already coming back. So that'll at least let you know I got a video out. So with that being said, we will see you guys next Thursday. Stay tuned, because we got some good videos coming up soon.
Bye!